Here is one tip for every legend in Apex Season 16. Let's go. Ash. You can use Ash's portal through windows. Keep in mind this ability is very sensitive when it comes to its placement, so you're able to mess it up quite easily if you're not careful. Now, using this through a window into a building works, but so does the opposite, going outside of a building through the window. You can use this if you feel like a quick reposition is needed to escape, or you can use it if you're trying to be aggressive with it. Revenant. When using Revenant's Death Totem, you want to try to pair it with other movement abilities like Wraith's Portal or Pathfinder's Zipline. Now, both of these abilities will assist with the element of surprise, but also could minimize any difficulties that will surround closing the gap to your opponents in a timely manner. Hopefully, you'll wind up taking no damage while utilizing these assets. Now, just be mindful of not getting sent back to the totem, as you may get caught out overextending. And another common problem is enemies camping the death totem so that when you do get sent back, you're just caught by surprise. This is ultimately why Revenant's Death Totem isn't all that good in Season 16, but I found it to be much better when pairing it with these movement abilities. Newcastle. When you're stuck in a bad position as Newcastle, direct one of your teammates, hopefully a skirmisher, to get to better positioning and then use your ultimate to safely reach them. This same tip can apply if your teammate is in a bad position too, but I found this works great when you have bad positioning, like an enemy has high ground over you and you're stuck on low ground. Now, his ultimate is very similar to Ash's in the way that it's also very sensitive when it comes to its placement. However, when latching to a nearby teammate, this ability seems to be much more consistent, so make sure you're utilizing this component. Loba. Now, I've mentioned this in a couple previous videos, but Loba is the only real support legend that has some aspect of mobility to her kit. And as a support legend, you always want to try to be the last one killed on your team. If you find yourself in an unwinnable 1v3 or 1v2, you can bracelet out of the fight and find the nearest crafter to get your teammates' banners back. Now, let's say you got to the crafter, but then you got pushed. Well, if you can escape further, you can use her ultimate, the Black Market, to then snatch the banners from the crafter. Now, I want to be clear, I'm not advocating that you run away to craft banners every time someone on your team gets knocked. But if you find yourself in a situation that doesn't seem winnable, then be sure to utilize this tip. Gibraltar. When using his bubble in buildings, this can act as two different layers at once. If you're in a zipline building, putting the bubble on the 3rd floor will still allow you to utilize part of the bubble on the 4th floor. In this clip, I remember placing this bubble so that it could help my teammate who was above me at the same time, but it was also crucial for me too. This is a smart way to use a bubble in a building fight if you find your teammate and yourself to be split up, but working towards the same goal. Vantage. Now, I'm just gonna say it. This season, Vantage is extremely underrated and underutilized, at least at the time of making this video. So I want to cover a couple tips for her. One is, if you are using her tactical in an aggressive manner, then be sure to crouch while you're mid-air so that you're able to pull your weapon out faster. This will only work if you crouch mid-air and you don't utilize her double jump at the end. If you are using her tactical to retreat from somewhere, then using her double jump will probably be much more handy in these moments. When using Vantage's sniper, think more about a sniper's role here. Play back, watch over your teammates, communicate with them regarding what you see, and go to work with it. This ability is incredibly strong, and it will continuously reward you for hitting your shots. The more shots you hit, the higher damage it will tack on, and it will also subtly highlight the enemies so that your teammates know who to focus in those moments. Caustic. Now for Caustic, let's talk about trap placement, particularly around doors. So if you want to straight up block a door, that's fine, but you must communicate it with your teammates. Otherwise, it could get one of them killed if they're on the roof or outside of the building and wind up trying to get into that door. You also don't want the trap placed too close up against the door, as part of the trap will actually appear through the door on the other side, and an enemy can activate it while avoiding most of the damage and then just be able to breach the door shortly after. If you want to make it so that an enemy will have to walk into the door but still activate the trap, we'll put it to the side of the door opposite to which it will swing open. That way, the door won't cover some of the trap, and also when placing a trap in front of a double door, make sure that it's placed at the exact right distance away from the door so that an enemy can't barely crack open the door and defuse the trap. Lifeline. Now, despite Lifeline receiving some new buffs this season, there really isn't much different with her when it comes to any advanced tips. But with that said, most inexperienced Lifelines always screw this up. Try not to revive your teammates when they are in a compromised position, unless you as Lifeline can body block for them and provide fire against whichever enemies are trying to thirst your teammate who's getting revived. Lifeline is not a free reviving tool. Yes, it's much better than manually reviving teammates, but it's not free by any means, so be careful of rezzing in open areas and just feeding your teammates to death. Rampart. Anytime an enemy is playing behind a door, pull Sheila out and spray them down. Rampart's ultimate can destroy doors, and most enemies either forget about this in the moment or entirely just don't know that this can happen. This is a great way to turn the tide of a fight into your team's favor. You can also throw a wall down in front of the door to amplify that damage and give you an extra layer of support from someone trying to open that door or kick it down before you're able to get Sheila out. Bloodhound. In Season 16, Bloodhound received some pretty significant changes. Now there's something called the White Raven, and every time you interact with a White Raven, it will add a 25% charge to your ultimate. The White Raven will lead you to the nearest team, and you will find these many times throughout your games. Once you interact with it, if you look up to your minimap, there will be red arrows that you and your teammates both can see, which will be leading in the direction of the nearest team. And if you see a white circle on your minimap that looks like the care package indicator, it's actually a location of the nearest White Raven. Walk up to it and press interact for it to lead you to the nearest enemy team. This will also activate when you use Bloodhound's ultimate, as it will actively fly in the direction of where the nearest team is. Horizon. Now that her tactical doesn't allow for accurate gunfire on it, it's important to take it and try to surprise enemies and or fall off of it while shooting. If enemies aren't on high ground and you're using this ability to take high ground, this can be extremely viable, but don't try to do what has worked in the past, which is ride up her queue and try to one-clip someone with an R301. Now, if an enemy is on high ground and you're trying to get up there, well, this ability is much faster now, and it's not always easy to follow the target on it when you're going up against one. So be mindful of what line of sight your enemies do have on you when using her lift. And if you get beamed on it, you can always fall back down and try to retake the lift while you're popping a shield battery and riding back up it. Crypto. This season, Crypto is actually a better pick than the last few seasons. He's definitely a nuanced legend, meaning the way you do certain things with his kit can be affected by small and subtle details. However, a pretty straightforward tip for him this season is utilize his drone and tap the new survey beacons. As I'm sure most of you know, this no longer gives ring knowledge. It instead is a 30-second UAV that will reveal every remaining player on your map. Now, these are static images on the map, so if players move, it won't be a live tracking of where they go. But by using his drone to gather this info, it can be incredibly valuable and way less riskier than having any of the other recon legends manually do it. Keep in mind, you can only scan each survey beacon once, so if you're holding an area in zone, remember to strategically time when you want to reveal the UAV. Next up, Pathfinder. Pathfinder's zipline now goes 60% further than any of the previous seasons. Now, if you want to use it for a huge macro rotation, besides just shooting it to the next neighboring POI, well, you can shoot the zipline to the top of a jump tower, and you will get a giant rotation from both of these combined, as the zipline will launch you right off from the top of the jump tower. However, do keep in mind that this tactic does not work on the jump tower on Broken Moon or the jump tower on Storm Point. Fuse. Use Fuse's tactical to move enemies out from cover or punish them when they're low and were just staying behind that cover. This ability can be fairly dynamic, but it's all about damage dealing and area denial. Don't just shoot random knuckle clusters in the rough direction of where you think enemies are. Be strategic with the placement of them and find out how much they can actually move the mark in fights. Another thing is be smart about when you elect to use your knuckle cluster while going against an enemy with their gun out. If you elect to use your knuckle cluster in too many instances, you will quickly see how having your gun out is much better in most instances. If you find yourself dying a lot while using his tactical, then you're probably doing it wrong. Mad Maggie. Maggie is a great counter against several legends, including Gibraltar, but she's not the ultimate counter to a legend like Newcastle. Let me explain. Maggie's ultimate, the Wrecking Ball, can flat out destroy a Gibby bubble, and this can be a solid strat if you want to take away whatever Gibby is using that bubble for, like using a heal or trying to revive his down teammate. However, for a legend like Newcastle, her Wrecking Ball doesn't destroy his tactical or his ultimate. But if you want to really try to hurt a Newcastle team, use her Riot Drill against his tactical or ultimate. Maggie's drill can also work great against a Gibby bubble, but sometimes it's not always worth it because of the timing of how long the bubble's up for and how long the drill will be burning for. Valkyrie. If you're falling from height and you want to be able to pull out your weapon faster, just tap the jets so that you briefly fly right before you hit the ground. This should take away any stunning effects from falling and will allow for your weapon to be drawn out faster. Catalyst. If you're using her ultimate and you need it to cover from exactly where you're standing, then be sure to look down while you're placing it. This will immerse Catalyst in the wall and continue in the direction you're looking at. However, if you just look forward and then place the wall, well, it will start a little bit in front of you. This could make a big difference if you're trying to exactly line the wall up to a building or something similar to it. Seer. With Seer's latest nerfs, his heartbeat sensor passive will now take a second or two for it to activate. Now this will wind up stalling your knowledge on if an enemy is in front of you or not. However, when you scan with your passive and look to the minimap, you will see a triangle, which is indicating the area his passive is covering. If the triangle is orange, then you know an enemy is close. If it's blue, then it's obviously clear. Now, if you see that it's orange, well, from there you can try to reflect back to the heartbeat sensor to try and find where the enemy or enemies are. And this will help you out in moments where you're trying to pass through certain areas that have a good amount of cover, like a building or something with multiple floors that can block your line of sight with this heartbeat sensor. Mirage. Now technically Mirage is in the skirmisher class, but the quicker you think about him as an assault/support legend, the better of a time you'll have with this legend. Mirage's new updated revive is pretty OP. So when going for a revive, I like to either send out a tactical while controlling it or just full on use my ultimate. Then I make sure the clones are separated from me while I go for the revive. Once I get back up, I wait to pull my gun out to take advantage of the extra time being invisible. Then I slide jump out with my weapon ready to take on whoever is near. Bangalore. Let's discuss a tip about her tactical smokes. When you want to cut off an enemy's angle on you and your team, and you aren't planning on pushing them, we'll start to analyze if smoking yourself would be easier than trying to smoke that enemy team. If the enemy is super far away, or you're potentially worried about multiple enemies shooting at you, then shooting smoke at yourself might be the better call. But if you're trying to close the gap to an enemy that is holding a certain area, smoking their biggest line of sight as you're approaching is a solid play too. Now, smoking your teammates can often wind up screwing them over, so I always make sure to communicate that I'm smoking for them, because if they don't have a digi threat, they could easily become disoriented from the smoke. However, there are moments where smoking you and your team are beneficial, and I hope this made it a bit more clear for you. Wraith. If you want to use Wraith's portal for a kidnap, start the portal on some sort of high ground as you are midair jumping off of it. Then when you're portaling at a stationary team, time your phase right before you'll start getting shot at, and then set the portal right into an enemy where they're walking or standing. As the kidnap happens, tell your teammate on the other side that you got one, and laugh as you guys hopefully kill them. If you try to do this without the help of your teammates on the other side, there's a strong chance this whole play will backfire, because the first person through the portal will now have an advantage on you when you inevitably have to come through the other side. Watson. Watson's passive allows for her to carry 2 ultimate accelerants in one backpack slot. So make sure to always be carrying these so that you can place your ultimate down frequently throughout a match. Basically, if you're taking a fight and you're going to be playing around a certain area, look for cover to place your gen behind. If somehow it gets destroyed, by using one ultimate accelerant, you will get another gen back instantly. Be sure to take advantage of this throughout your matches. Octane. When it comes to playing Octane, I often think about that one Office quote with Dwight Schrute where he says, "Whenever I'm about to do something, I think, would an idiot do that? And if they would, I do not do that thing." I think this perfectly summarizes what not to do on Octane. If you enjoyed this video and you want to learn about my top 15 tips for every controller player, well, I covered it all in this video here. Feel free to check it out next. Thanks for watching. Peace.